Isn't insight intuition? Would you discuss this sudden clarity some of us have? What do you mean by insight? And is it a momentary thing, or can it be continuous? Shall I read that question again? Isn't insight intuition? You have heard these two words, I'm sure. Would you discuss this sudden clarity some of us have? What do you mean by insight? And is it a momentary thing, or can it be continuous? Right? In the various talks the speaker has given, he has used the word insight. That is, to see into things, into the whole movement of thought, into the whole movement, for example, jealousy, to perceive the nature of greed, to see the whole content of sorrow. Not analysis, not exercise of intellectual capacity, nor is it the result of knowledge. Knowledge being that which has been accumulated through the past as experience, stored up in the brain. Therefore, knowledge always goes with ignorance. There is no complete knowledge. Therefore, there is always knowledge and ignorance are like two horses tethered. So, then what is insight? You understand my question? You following this? Please, this may give you, it is a hot morning, but it doesn't matter, a little bit. If it is not, the observation is not based on knowledge or on intellectual capacity of reasoning, exploring, and analyzing, then what is it? That's the whole question. And the questioner asks also, is it intuition? That word intuition is rather a tricky word, because many of us use that word. That word may be the feeling, the actuality of intuition may be the result of desire. One may desire something, and then a few days later you have an intuition about it. And you think that intuition is most extraordinarily important. But if you go into it rather deeply, you may find that it's based on desire, on fear, on various forms of pleasure. So one is rather doubtful about that word, especially used by those people who are rather romantic, who are rather imaginative, sentimental, and wanting something. And they will certainly have intuitions, but it may be based on some obvious self-deceptive desire. So we can, for the moment, we can put aside intuition, that word. I hope you are not hurting anybody who are caught in intuitions. And if that is not so, then what is insight? That is, to perceive something instantly and which must be true, logical, sane, rational. Understand? And that insight must act instantly. If it isn't that I have an insight and do nothing about it. If I have an insight, if one has an insight into the whole nature of thinking, you understand? That is, I'll explain a little bit about thinking. Thinking is the response of memory. Memory is the result of experience, knowledge stored up in the brain. And the memory responds. Where do you live? You answer. What's your name? There is immediate response. And so on. It is thought is the result or the response of the accumulated experience, knowledge as memory. That's simple. So that thought based upon or the outcome of knowledge, that thought is limited because knowledge is limited. So thought can never be all-inclusive. It must always be partial, limited, based on knowledge and ignorance. Therefore, it is everlastingly confined, limited, narrow. Right? Now, to have an insight into that, which means, is there an action which is not merely the repetition of thought? You following all this? To have an insight into, say, into organizations. Let's take that. Right? To have an insight into it. Which means that you are observing without memory, remembrances, without argumentation, pro and cons, just to see the whole movement and the demand for organization. Yes? Then you have an insight into it. And from that insight you act. And that action is logical, is sane, healthy. It's not you have an insight and then you act the opposite. Then it's not insight. I wonder if you're getting all this. Sorry to be so emphatic. That's my way of doing it. To have an insight, for example, into the wounds, hurts that one has received from childhood. You understand my question? We're all people who are hurt for various reasons. From childhood till we die, there is this wound in us, psychologically. Now, to have an insight into the whole nature and structure of that hurt. Do you understand what I'm saying? Are you following all this? You're hurt, aren't you, sirs? Wounded psychologically? No, do. I mean, play the game with me, will you also? The ball is in your court. You're hurt. obviously. You may go to a psychologist, analyst, psychotherapist, and they trace you why you are hurt, what from childhood, your mother was this and your father was that, or you're put in the wrong pot and the right pot, and so on, so on, so on. No, don't, please. Go into it. And by merely looking or seeking out the cause, the hurt is not going to be resolved. Right? It is there. And the consequences of that hurt is isolation, fear, resistance, and not to be hurt more, therefore self-enclosure. You know all this. That's the whole movement of being hurt. The hurt is the image that you have created for yourself, about yourself. You understand? Right? So, as long as that image remains, you will be hurt, obviously. Now, to have an insight into all that without analysis, to see it instantly, and the very perception of that insight which demands all your attention and energy, the hurt is dissolved. And therefore, when it's dissolved, there is no further hurt. I wonder if you get all this. Or you, if one may ask, most politely, you've heard this, have you got that insight that will dissolve your hurt completely, leaving no mark, and therefore no more hurt? Nobody can hurt. You don't say hurt you. Because the image that you have created about yourself is non-existent. Are you following all that? Are you doing it, or are you just merely verbally paying attention to the words?
I don't really understand what you mean about the way we created this.
Huh? What's up?
I don't really understand what you mean when you say, we have this created hurt.
He says he doesn't really understand what you mean when you say we have created this hurt.
Now, first of all, who is hurt? What do you mean by being hurt? Fine, so what do you mean by being hurt? You say, I am hurt. Consciously, you are aware of it or not. One is hurt. Now, what is that which is being hurt? You understand my question? You understand, sir? What is that which is hurt? You say, it's me. What is that me? It's the image you have about yourself. If I have an image about myself as a marvelous spiritual blah blah, and you come along and say, no, you're a silly ass, I get hurt. That is thought. Please follow this. Thought has created an image about oneself, and that image is always comparing. It is my image is better than your image. And so on, so on, so on. So as long as one has this image about oneself, it is going to be trodden on by somebody. And that is called hurt, wound, psychologically. So the problem, to have an insight into that means to see the whole movement, the cause and the image. And therefore the very perception of it ends the image. You understand this? No. No?